My name is Forrest Taylor, and at 62 I look back on a life spent with hammers and hearts. After cancer stole my wife, I raised our 7 children alone, pouring every drop of sweat into giving them better lives. They all soared to success, but somehow I became invisible in their world. The man who carried them on his shoulders was left behind, forgotten on birthdays and holidays. Until one rainy afternoon, a chance encounter with another elderly father changed everything in ways I never imagined. Before I share how this stranger helped me reclaim my dignity, when my own children forgot me, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you believe family should always come first. Life has a way of changing course when you least expect it. For me, that moment came on a bright spring morning in Portland, Oregon, when my wife Laura collapsed in our kitchen. The doctors gave us the news no family wants to hear. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer already spread too far. 3 painful months later, I stood at her graveside holding the hands of our 7 children. Jack, 12, already trying to be the man of the house. Emma, 11, with her mother's gentle eyes. Samuel, 9, clutching his small guitar. The twins, Harper and Hannah, holding each other as they always did. Noah, 5, too young to fully understand. And little Sophie, just 2, who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. The weight of responsibility crashed down on me that day. I was a construction foreman used to hard physical labor, but nothing prepared me for the emotional labor of becoming both mother and father overnight. As we drove home from the cemetery, I caught Laura's reflection in the rearview mirror before realizing it was just my imagination. That night, after finally getting all 7 children to sleep, I sat alone at our kitchen table and made a promise to Laura that I would give our children the lives she had dreamed for them, no matter the cost to myself. The first year was a blur of exhaustion. I would wake at 4:30 a.m. to prepare lunches before getting the kids ready for school. Jack stepped up, helping with the younger ones, while Emma became my right hand with household chores. I arranged with my boss to start work early so I could leave in time for school pickup. Nights were spent helping with homework, cooking dinner, bath time, bedtime stories, and then often taking on side jobs after the kids were asleep. Money was tight from the beginning. Laura's medical bills had drained our savings, and her life insurance barely covered the funeral costs. I picked up weekend work, renovating houses, often bringing the younger kids along, setting them up with coloring books in a clean corner while I installed drywall or repaired roofing. My hands grew calloused and cracked, but I never complained. This was the life I had chosen when I fell in love with Laura. The hardest moment came 6 months after her death, when I finally gathered the courage to pack away her clothes. Sophie found me sitting on the bedroom floor, surrounded by Laura's dresses, tears streaming down my face. Instead of being confused, my 2-year-old simply sat in my lap and wiped my cheeks with her tiny hands. "Daddy's sad," she said, and I nodded, holding her close. That weekend I sold Laura's jewelry to pay for winter coats for the children, keeping only her wedding ring, which I wore on a chain around my neck. Our first Christmas without Laura tested my creativity and strength. I had always been the one to haul in the tree and hang the lights, but Laura had been the heart of our holiday traditions. Determined not to let the children feel her absence more keenly, I stayed up 3 nights straight after work, sewing stockings to replace the ones Laura had made, which had been damaged in storage. My stitches were clumsy, nothing like her delicate handiwork, but the children's eyes lit up on Christmas morning all the same. I learned to braid Sophie's hair by watching tutorials at night when everyone was asleep. My first attempts were disasters that had her preschool teachers gently fixing my work, but eventually I mastered French braids and even fancy updos for school pictures. I taught myself to cook beyond the basics of burgers and spaghetti, collecting recipes that were both nutritious and appealing to picky eaters. Sunday became roast chicken day, a tradition the children came to count on, when so much else in their lives had become uncertain. There were moments of joy amid the struggle, like when Noah lost his first tooth and I, exhausted from a 14-hour workday, still remembered to play Tooth Fairy. Or when Samuel had his first music recital and I sat in the audience still in my dusty work clothes, beaming with pride as he played a simple melody on his second-hand guitar. These small victories kept me going through the hardest days. We developed systems and routines that kept our household functioning. Morning checklists hung on the refrigerator. Chore wheels rotated weekly. The older children had assigned younger siblings to help. Every night ended with our family mantra, something Laura had started: Taylors stick together no matter the weather. Even on days when everything went wrong, when the washing machine flooded, or someone got sick, or the car broke down, we would gather in the living room before bed and repeat those words together. As I look back on those early years, I remember the bone-deep exhaustion, but also the purpose that drove every decision. My children needed me, and that was enough to push through another day. Time moved forward, as it always does, and before I knew it, my little ones weren't so little anymore. Jack hit his growth spurt at 14, towering over me at 6'2". Emma blossomed into a poised young woman who reminded me so much of Laura that sometimes it hurt to look at her. The twins developed their own language of inside jokes and half-sentences. Samuel's music evolved from simple melodies to complex compositions. Noah struggled with reading, but showed remarkable mechanical aptitude. And Sophie, our baby, became a quiet observer who captured the world in detailed drawings. My promotion at work to senior project manager brought a welcome pay increase, but the additional responsibilities meant longer hours. I would arrive home with just enough time to help with homework and prepare a quick dinner before collapsing into bed. The kids began taking on more household duties, but I never wanted them to sacrifice their childhoods the way I had sacrificed my adulthood. I wanted them to join sports teams, take music lessons, go to school dances, all the normal experiences I feared they might miss without a mother. My own needs fell to the bottom of every list. When a persistent cough developed into pneumonia, I continued working, downing antibiotics between job sites. When my back gave out after lifting a steel beam, I took 2 days off instead of the recommended 2 weeks. Doctor appointments were luxuries I couldn't afford in time or money. My social life became non-existent. A few kind women from the PTA or neighborhood occasionally expressed interest, but dating seemed like a betrayal of both Laura and the children. Besides, who would want to take on a package deal of 7 kids and an overworked construction worker? The proudest day of my early parenting journey came when Jack received his acceptance letter to Boston University on a pre-med scholarship. As he read the letter aloud at dinner, his voice shaking with excitement, I felt Laura's presence stronger than I had in years. This was why we had sacrificed. This was the future we had dreamed about during late-night conversations when the kids were babies. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in my truck in the driveway and allowed myself a rare moment of pure pride. Reality hit a week later when we calculated the costs not covered by Jack's scholarship. Even with his part-time job, there would be a significant shortfall. Without telling him, I sold my 1967 Chevy truck, the one possession I truly loved, the truck Laura and I had driven to our honeymoon. I told the kids it was time for something more practical, but Jack found the listing online and confronted me. "You can't sell it, Dad," he insisted. "Mom loved that truck." I just smiled and told him, "Your mother would want you in Boston more than she would want me driving her around in an old truck." Emma's acceptance to Northwestern Law School the following year necessitated a second mortgage on our home. Samuel's music program required professional-grade instruments. The twins both excelled in sports requiring travel for competitions. Noah's learning disabilities meant specialized tutoring. Sophie's artistic talents called for proper supplies and classes. Each achievement by my children represented another financial stretch for me, but I never let them see the strain. Instead, I picked up more overtime, took on consulting jobs, and stretched every dollar until Washington and Lincoln were barely on speaking terms. One night after a particularly long day that had started at 4 a.m. and ended with a parent-teacher conference at 9 p.m., I fell asleep at the kitchen table while sorting bills. Jack found me there, my head resting on a pile of envelopes marked "Final Notice." He was home from college for spring break, and I saw in his eyes the dawning realization of what his education was costing me. "Dad," he said softly, shaking me awake, "you can't keep doing this." I just patted his hand and assured him I was fine, just a little tired. The truth was, I had never felt less fine in my life. My body was beginning to break down after 20 years of physical labor and stress. My hands developed tremors that made precise work difficult. My knees ached constantly, but admitting weakness wasn't an option. Not when 3 of my 7 still lived at home and needed college funds of their own. Our family tradition of Sunday dinners became harder to maintain as the kids grew older. Jack was in Boston, Emma in Chicago, Samuel traveling with orchestras. The twins were busy with their final years of high school and college applications. Noah had his tutoring sessions. Sophie was the only constant, sitting beside me at our too large table, drawing pictures of the family all together the way we used to be. "They'll come back," she would assure me when she saw me staring at the empty chairs. "Everyone comes home eventually." I wanted to believe her, but as my body deteriorated from years of hard work, I began to wonder if I would even recognize home anymore. The children I had raised were becoming strangers, evolving into adults with their own priorities and perspectives. And somewhere in that transformation, I felt myself becoming invisible. The years slipped away like sand through my weathered fingers. Before I knew it all, 7 of my children had grown into successful adults, and I found myself facing retirement at 58 with a body worn down by decades of construction work and single parenting. Jack had become a renowned cardiovascular surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, saving lives with the same determination I had seen in him as a 12-year-old, helping with his siblings. Emma practiced corporate law in Chicago, her sharp mind winning case after case. Samuel traveled the world with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, his talent far exceeding the simple melodies he had played on that second-hand guitar. The twins had taken different paths, but achieved equal success. Harper opened a physical therapy practice specializing in sports injuries, inspired by her own experience with a track accident in high school. Hannah earned her PhD and became a professor of environmental science at UC Berkeley. Noah, who had struggled so much with traditional learning, found his niche developing educational software for children with learning disabilities like his own. And Sophie, my baby, attended Rhode Island School of Design on a full scholarship, her artwork already featured in small galleries. I should have been nothing but proud. Every sacrifice had paid off. Every late night, every skipped vacation, every medical issue I had ignored, all of it had helped my children reach heights Laura and I had only dreamed of. But as I sat alone at my retirement party, watching the clock, as Sophie texted that she was running late and would probably miss it altogether, pride mingled with a gnawing emptiness I had never allowed myself to acknowledge. Only 3 of my coworkers attended the small gathering in the back room of a local restaurant. We shared beers and stories about job sites over the years, carefully avoiding talk of families when they saw no one had come to celebrate with me. I made excuses for my children. They were busy, successful people with important responsibilities. The truth felt too pathetic to voice. They had simply forgotten. Or worse, remembered, but decided not to come. My new apartment was a far cry from the five-bedroom house we had once filled with noise and life. After paying for 7 college educations, helping with down payments on first homes, and covering the costs of 3 weddings, my retirement savings were modest at best. The one-bedroom unit in a senior living complex was all I could afford, but it felt cavernous in its emptiness. I hung family photos on every wall, a gallery of smiling faces that no longer turned in my direction. I tried everything to maintain connections. I sent birthday cards with the small checks I could manage. I made phone calls that went to voicemail. I planned visits that were postponed or canceled at the last minute. When Jack's second child was born, I flew to Boston using most of my monthly pension, only to spend most of the visit sitting alone in their guest room, while Jack worked, and his wife entertained her own parents, who had arrived the same day. The holidays became a particular kind of torture. Each year, I would call all 11 children, asking about their Thanksgiving or Christmas plans, hoping for an invitation. Most years I received vague responses about other commitments or complicated schedules. Occasionally, out of guilt, perhaps one of them would invite me to join their celebration, but I always felt like an awkward addition, a relic from a past they were eager to leave behind. The Thanksgiving when I turned 59 was especially painful. I had saved for months to fly to California where Hannah had promised a family gathering. 3 days before my flight, she called to say her in-laws had decided to visit, and there simply wasn't room for everyone. "Maybe Christmas, Dad," she suggested, her tone already indicating the unlikelihood. I spent that Thanksgiving at a diner near my apartment, the waitress taking pity and bringing me extra pie. My 60th birthday passed without a single phone call. That evening, I sat at my small kitchen table with a store-bought cupcake, a single candle flickering in the dim light, and allowed myself to cry for the first time since Laura died. I cried for the emptiness of my days, for the silence of my phone, for the children who had climbed to success on my broken back and then forgotten to look down. Physical ailments that had begun during my working years worsened in retirement. The arthritis in my hands made even simple tasks like buttoning shirts difficult. My back, damaged from decades of lifting and bending, often left me bedridden for days. Without employer health insurance, I rationed doctor visits and medications, often choosing between pain relief and groceries for the week. Financial struggles compounded my isolation. After spending everything on my children, my fixed income barely covered rent, utilities, and basic necessities. When Jack mentioned in a rare phone call that his son wanted to attend space camp, I stayed silent rather than admit I couldn't afford to help with the $3,000 fee. The next day, I pawned Laura's wedding ring, the one possession I had kept through all the hard years, to send my grandson to space camp. Jack never knew, and his thank you text consisted of 3 words: "Thomas is thrilled." On quiet evenings, which was every evening, I would page through old photo albums tracing the trajectory of our family. There were so many photos of the children with me. At baseball games, dance recitals, graduation ceremonies. My arm always around their shoulders, my face always beaming with pride. Then gradually, I disappeared from the pictures. Their social media accounts showed holiday gatherings, vacation trips, milestone celebrations, events I never knew about until after they happened. In their new narratives, they had somehow written me out of the story. I would stare at these images for hours, searching for clues. Where had I gone wrong? Had I been too strict or not strict enough? Had I worked so much that they never felt loved? Had I somehow failed to teach them the value of family, of remembering where you came from? Or was this simply the way of the world? Children grow up, move on, and forget the hands that raised them. My 62nd birthday marked the breaking point, the day I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. I had spent the morning cleaning my small apartment, then preparing a special dinner. pot roast with all the trimmings Laura's recipe that I had perfected over the years of raising our children alone. I set the table for one but kept my phone nearby, checking it every few minutes, certain that today would be different. Surely today at least one of my 7 children would remember. The roast dried out as the hours passed. 6 o'clock came and went. Then 7. 8. By 9 I had wrapped the untouched food in containers and placed them in the freezer portions that would last me for days. My phone remained silent except for a robocall about extending my car warranty and a text from my landlord about upcoming maintenance. That night, scrolling through social media in a moment of masochistic curiosity, I discovered that Jack had been promoted to head of cardiothoracic surgery. The hospital's Facebook page featured him cutting a ceremonial ribbon, his wife and children beaming beside him. The post had been made 3 weeks earlier. My own son had not thought to share this milestone with me. The discoveries continued, each one a fresh cut. Emma had purchased a lakefront vacation home, posted virtual tours of each perfectly decorated room. Samuel's orchestra had performed at Carnegie Hall, a dream he and I had discussed when he was just a boy practicing scales at our kitchen table. The twins had co-hosted a charity event for children with cancer. Cancer, the disease that had taken their mother, an event they might have known would hold special meaning for me. The deepest wound came when I learned that Noah's software company had been featured in the Portland Business Journal just miles from where I lived. In the interview, he described himself as self-made, crediting his success to overcoming learning disabilities through personal determination. There was no mention of the father who had worked double shifts to pay for his specialized tutors, who had spent countless nights helping him work through frustrating homework assignments, who had advocated fiercely with teachers and administrators when they wanted to track him into remedial classes. I decided to attend Sophie's art exhibition at a local gallery without telling her. Perhaps seeing her would lift my spirits. I dressed in my best clothes I had worn to her college graduation 3 years earlier, and made my way to the downtown gallery. Sophie was surrounded by admirers, elegant in a black dress. I had never seen her artwork, commanding impressive prices according to the small red dots appearing on the placards. I stood nearby waiting for her to notice me, a small gift in my hands. When she finally turned and saw me, her expression flickered between surprise and something else. Embarrassment, perhaps. She introduced me to her friends simply as Forrest, not my father, or even my dad. One friend asked how we knew each other, and before I could answer, Sophie said vaguely, "Family friend. He's known me since I was little." I stayed just 15 more minutes before placing her gift, a carved wooden frame I had made in a community class, on a side table, and leaving without saying goodbye. She did not call to thank me for the gift, nor to ask why I had left so abruptly. That night, I removed every family photo from my walls. Each smiling image felt like a lie, a mockery of what family should mean. I placed them all in a storage box and pushed it deep into my closet. Then I sat down and wrote a letter to all 7 of my children, pouring out decades of hurt in page after handwritten page. I described the birthdays spent alone, the holidays watching other families celebrate together, the milestones I learned about only after they had passed. I detailed the sacrifices they had never acknowledged. The truck I sold, the house I mortgaged, the medical issues I ignored, the retirement savings I depleted. I wrote until my hand cramped and the pages were spotted with tears. But in the morning light, I could not bring myself to mail the letter. What would be the point? To make them feel guilty, to force attention? They clearly did not want to give. I tore the pages into small pieces and watched them flutter into the trash can like the last remnants of my expectations. That week, I visited a retirement home, a place for elderly people with no family to care for them. The facility was clean but depressing, full of people who stared vacantly at daytime television. The administrator showed me a shared room, explaining that it was all my limited income would cover. I took a brochure, but could not bring myself to fill out the application. Not yet. Though my children had forgotten me, I was not quite ready to institutionalize the forgetting. Instead, I walked through the city park near my apartment, oblivious to the light rain soaking through my jacket. My body ached from the dampness, but the physical pain was almost a relief compared to the emotional wounds. I found myself on a bench watching ducks paddle across the small pond, wondering how many more birthdays I would celebrate alone. Sometimes the universe places exactly the right person in your path at exactly the right moment. For me, that person was Gerald Morrison, a 78-year-old widower I met at a diner near my apartment complex. I had stopped in for coffee, unable to face another meal alone in my empty apartment, when I noticed an elderly man at the counter watching me with curious intensity. "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world," he said, as I took the stool beside him. His voice had the gravelly quality of someone who had smoked for decades, but quit too late. Or maybe just the weight of ungrateful children. I nearly spilled my coffee at his accurate assessment. "Is it that obvious?" Gerald smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "Takes one to know one. I raised 4 myself after my wife passed. 2 doctors, a lawyer, and an engineer. All too busy to remember their old man exists most of the time." Over the next 2 hours, Gerald and I shared our stories. His paralleled mine in many ways. The early widowhood, the years of sacrifice, the successful children who had moved on without looking back. But unlike me, Gerald radiated a peaceful acceptance I couldn't comprehend. "Took me years to figure it out," he explained, signaling the waitress for more coffee. "Our worth isn't measured by our children's attention. The moment I stopped waiting by the phone, stopped expecting invitations, stopped measuring my value by how often they called, that's when I started living again." "How?" I asked the simple question containing all my desperation. "Come with me tomorrow," was his only answer. The next day, Gerald introduced me to the Riverside Senior Center, a bustling community hub I had passed hundreds of times without noticing. Inside, seniors were engaged in art classes, book discussions, fitness groups, and volunteer coordination. Gerald had been coming here for years, he explained, teaching woodworking classes and organizing outreach programs. "Most of these folks have family somewhere," he told me as we toured the facility. "Some get regular visits, some don't. But none of them are sitting at home waiting for permission to keep living." I attended my first community event that weekend. A potluck dinner where I contributed Laura's famous apple pie. The recipe had gathered dust since Sophie left for college, but the familiar process of peeling apples and crimping crust brought back memories that felt bittersweet rather than purely painful. When several people asked for the recipe, I felt a small spark of pride I hadn't experienced in years. At the senior center, I met others with similar experiences. Margaret, whose 3 children lived abroad and called only on Christmas. Victor, whose son had cut contact after marrying someone Victor had initially disapproved of. Elaine, whose daughter visited regularly, but treated her like a child rather than a person with valuable life experience. Their stories helped me see that my situation, while painful, was not unique. During my 3rd week at the center, the volunteer coordinator approached me with an unexpected proposal. "We have a program for mentoring young single parents," she explained. "Most of our volunteers are women helping single mothers, but we have several single fathers who could really use guidance from someone who's been there. Would you consider it?" My immediate reaction was reluctance. What advice could I possibly offer when my own family had fallen apart? But something in her hopeful expression made me agree to at least meet one of the fathers. Anthony was 30, raising 2 boys ages 4 and 6 after their mother left for another relationship. He worked as a plumber and brought his sons to our first meeting at a park near the senior center. The boys played on the swings while Anthony described his struggles, the logistics of childcare during work emergencies, the emotional challenges of answering questions about their absent mother, the isolation of being the only single dad in their social circle. As he spoke, I found myself offering practical solutions almost automatically. Systems for morning routines to reduce chaos, strategies for meal prep on weekends to simplify weeknight dinners, approaches to school conferences that would build relationships with teachers. After an hour, Anthony looked at me with something close to reverence. "Man, I thought I was drowning," he said, shaking his head. "You make it sound possible." "It is possible," I assured him. "Hard as hell, but possible, and worth every sacrifice." When he thanked me as we parted, genuine gratitude in his voice, I felt tears spring to my eyes. This young father valued advice my own children had long since dismissed. There was something profoundly healing in being seen and having my life experience recognized as valuable. The mentoring expanded. Anthony introduced me to other single fathers in his network. Within a month, I was meeting regularly with 5 young men navigating the challenges I had faced decades earlier. I created a structured support group that met weekly at the senior center, providing both practical advice and emotional support. A local newspaper reporter heard about our group and wrote a small feature. The article described me as a retired construction worker who raised 7 successful children as a single father and now shares his wisdom with a new generation. Reading those words, seeing my life's work acknowledged so plainly, I felt a surge of pride I had almost forgotten. With Gerald's encouragement, I also began to rediscover interests I had abandoned during my child-raising years. I joined his woodworking class, finding that my construction skills transferred well to more delicate projects. My first creation was a small jewelry box with dovetail joints, something Laura had always wanted, but I had never had time to make. I kept it on my bedside table, a tangible reminder that it wasn't too late to fulfill old promises, even if only to myself. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, my small apartment began to feel less like a waiting room and more like a home. I added plants that needed my care to thrive. I displayed my woodworking projects instead of family photos. I made friends who called just to check in, who saved me seats at community events, who noticed if I missed a regular activity. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself rather than through my children. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but 6 months after meeting Gerald, my life had changed in ways I could never have predicted. My apartment, once a shrine to absent children, now reflected my rediscovered passions. Shelves displayed the wooden boxes, picture frames, and small furniture pieces I crafted in woodworking class. Potted herbs lined my kitchen windowsill, providing fresh seasonings for recipes I enjoyed cooking just for myself. The walls, once covered with family photos that only reminded me of my isolation, now held landscapes I had painted in the senior center's art class. My physical appearance reflected the inner changes as well. Regular swimming at the community pool had eased my back pain and strengthened muscles weakened by years of inactivity. A proper diet replaced the haphazard meals I had been consuming. Even my posture had improved. I stood straighter, no longer bent under the weight of rejection. My volunteer work expanded beyond the single father's support group. I began helping with home repairs for elderly residents unable to afford professional services. I taught basic construction skills to teenagers in an after-school program. I joined the Senior Center's outreach committee, identifying isolated seniors in our community and developing strategies to integrate them into social activities. Gerald and I became close friends, meeting for breakfast 3 times a week and fishing on Sunday afternoons. He had been right about everything. The moment I stopped measuring my worth by my children's attention, I began to heal. We often joked that we had adopted each other as father and son, filling the gaps left by biological family who had moved on. The single fathers support group flourished under my guidance. What had started with 5 participants grew to 15, then 20. We expanded from weekly meetings at the senior center to include family picnics where the children played together while the fathers bonded over shared experiences. Anthony, my first mentee, took on leadership responsibilities, helping newcomers feel welcome and organizing volunteer childcare during our meetings. The local recognition of our work came unexpectedly. The TV station that had covered the original newspaper story requested a follow-up interview this time for their evening news broadcast. I agreed, though I felt uncomfortable with the attention. The reporter asked thoughtful questions about my experience as a single father and the importance of community support. I spoke honestly about the challenges I had faced and the fulfillment I found in helping others navigate similar circumstances. What I didn't realize was how far the interview would reach. The segment aired locally, but was picked up by the station's national affiliate and shared on social media platforms. Within days, it had been viewed over 1 million times, with comments praising the inspiring elderly dad helping a new generation. I found the attention embarrassing, but was pleased that it brought more attention to the issues facing single fathers. I never expected my own children to see the interview scattered as they were across the country with their busy lives. But 4 days after it aired, my phone rang with Jack's number on the display, my oldest son who had not called in over 8 months. "Dad," he said, his voice strained, "I just saw you on the news. Why didn't you tell us about your volunteer work?" The question struck me as so absurd that I almost laughed. "When would I have told you, Jack? The last time we spoke was at Christmas, and that was a 3-minute call where you put me on speakerphone while you were driving." The silence that followed contained more honesty than we had shared in years. Over the next week, all 7 of my children reached out in various ways. Emma sent a formal email expressing her admiration for my community involvement and suggesting we schedule a phone call at our mutual convenience. Samuel left a voicemail saying he would be performing with his orchestra in Seattle, just a few hours from Portland, and wondering if I might attend. The twins sent text messages with almost identical wording, asking about my health and mentioning upcoming visits to Oregon. Noah called to discuss the possibility of his software company donating to the senior center. Sophie sent a card with a brief note saying she missed me. Their sudden attention might have thrilled me 6 months earlier. Now I felt a complicated mix of emotions: gratitude that they had noticed me again, resentment that it took public recognition to prompt their interest, and a new, unexpected feeling of independence. I no longer needed their approval or attention to validate my existence. Jack flew to Portland unannounced the following weekend, appearing at my apartment door with an expression that hovered between contrition and defensiveness. I invited him in, offered coffee, and waited for him to speak first. "Your place looks different," he said, taking in the woodworking projects and absence of family photos. "I've changed," I replied simply. The conversation that followed was the most honest we had ever had as adults. Jack admitted that in his drive to succeed, he had taken my sacrifices for granted, had convinced himself that his achievements were solely the result of his own hard work. I acknowledged that perhaps I had enabled their neglect by always being the one to reach out, never demanding recognition for what I had given them. "I saw you mentoring those young fathers," Jack said, his voice breaking slightly. "Doing for strangers what you did for us. And it hit me. We never thanked you. Not once." "No," I agreed. "You never did." Before he left, Jack asked if he could arrange a video call with all his siblings, a family meeting of sorts. I agreed, curious about what would come of it. The call took place the following evening, all 7 of my children on the screen at once. a sight I hadn't seen in over a decade. Emma spoke first, her lawyer's precision, making her the natural spokesperson. "We owe you an apology, Dad. Collectively and individually. We've been thoughtless and ungrateful, and seeing you on television, helping other fathers while we've ignored you. It was a wake-up call we should not have needed." One by one, they offered their apologies. The twins admitted they had intentionally planned family gatherings when they knew I couldn't attend, finding my presence a reminder of harder times. Samuel confessed he had seen me at his Portland performance but pretended not to notice because introducing me to his colleagues felt complicated. Noah acknowledged that calling himself self-made had been both untrue and deeply hurtful. Sophie, crying softly, said she had been embarrassed by my working-class background among her artistic friends, a confession that once would have shattered me. I listened without interrupting, without offering easy absolution. When they had finished, I thanked them for their honesty and told them I would need time to process everything they had said. The call ended with tentative plans for individual conversations in the coming weeks. That night, I called Gerald and shared everything that had happened. His wisdom, as always, cut to the heart of the matter. "The question isn't whether you forgive them, Forrest. The question is whether you need them in the same way you once did. Forgiveness is free, but trust and intimacy have to be earned." Over the following months, each of my children made efforts to rebuild our relationship. The twins sent handmade gifts. Harper a quilt stitched from the children's old sports jerseys. Hannah a scrapbook of family recipes with her own notes added. Samuel dedicated a solo performance to "My father who taught me that music comes from sacrifice" at a concert I attended as his guest. Noah updated his company website to include a founder's story that credited his success to "a father who never stopped believing in me." Sophie painted my portrait, capturing a strength and dignity in my features I had not recognized in myself. These gestures touched me deeply, but I maintained a careful emotional distance. I had learned to value myself beyond my role as their father. Our reconciliation would need to acknowledge that I was a complete person, with my own life, not merely a supporting character in their stories. 1 year later, on my 63rd birthday, I received an unexpected invitation from Jack. "We'd like to host a small gathering for your birthday," the text read. "All 7 of us will be there. No grandchildren or spouses, just us. Would Saturday at 5 work?" I arrived at the rented private room of a local restaurant to find all 7 of my children waiting, the first time we had been together in the same space since Sophie's college graduation 4 years earlier. The table was decorated with construction-themed elements, a nod to my career and the foundation I had built for their lives. A banner read, "Happy birthday to the man who built everything." Dinner was filled with stories I had never heard, moments when my children had recognized my sacrifices, even if they had never acknowledged them to me. Jack described how he thought of me during his first solo surgery, drawing strength from memories of watching me tackle seemingly impossible house repairs with calm determination. Emma recalled using my negotiations with bill collectors as a model for her first major corporate settlement. Samuel admitted that his stage presence came from watching me interact with subcontractors on job sites, commanding respect without demanding it. After dessert, they presented me with a leather-bound book. Each had written a letter expressing specific gratitude for aspects of my parenting they had previously taken for granted. The concrete acts of sacrifice, sold possessions, second mortgages, postponed medical care. The emotional support, attendance at every school event despite exhaustion, careful nurturing of their unique talents, unwavering belief in their potential. The life lessons: work ethic, resilience, integrity, compassion. When they finished, I took a deep breath and shared my own journey. The depths of loneliness I had experienced, the rock bottom of my 62nd birthday, the transformative meeting with Gerald, and the unexpected healing I had found in helping others. I described how building a life apart from my identity as their father had saved me when their absence had nearly broken me. "I love each of you," I told them, my voice steady. "I always have and always will, but I needed to learn that I matter beyond being your father. My value doesn't depend on your recognition or attention." That's the lesson I hope you take from all this. That every person in your life, especially those who sacrificed for you, deserves to be seen as complete human beings, not just for what they gave you. The silence that followed held more understanding than any words could have conveyed. In the year since that birthday gathering, our family has established new traditions based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Monthly video calls keep us connected between in-person visits. My children consult me about important decisions, not out of duty, but genuine interest in my perspective. I attend family events when invited, but maintain my own full life, declining when activities at the senior center or with my mentoring group take precedence. Gerald remains my closest friend, though his health has declined recently. During a fishing trip last month, he confided something that startled me. His own children had never reconnected with him, despite seeing the same news segment that had prompted my family's return. "Does it make you sad?" I asked as we sat watching our lines in the water. "It did for a long time," he admitted. "But I realized something important, Forrest. I didn't help you so your children would come back. I helped you so you would come back to yourself. Whether they returned or not was secondary." His wisdom has become my guiding philosophy. The Senior Center recently named our mentoring program after me, the Forrest Taylor Fatherhood Project. But the recognition means less to me than the progress of the young men I mentor. Anthony recently received a promotion that will allow him to provide better for his boys. 2 other fathers in our group have formed a child care cooperative, taking turns watching each other's children to enable more flexible work schedules. These concrete improvements in their lives bring me more satisfaction than any accolade. My woodworking hobby has evolved into a small business with several local boutiques selling my handcrafted items. The physical pain that once dominated my days has receded with proper medical care, a luxury I now allow myself without guilt. I date occasionally, mostly widow friends from the senior center, enjoying female companionship without expectations of serious commitment. My children and I are creating a new type of relationship, one based on adult mutual respect rather than parental sacrifice and filial obligation. We acknowledge the past hurts without letting them define our present interactions. They understand now that my love for them was never conditional, but my time and attention have become precious resources I allocate thoughtfully. The greatest lesson I've learned through this journey is that dignity cannot be given to you by others, not even by your children. Dignity comes from standing tall in your own truth, from finding purpose that extends beyond family roles, from building a life that feels meaningful, whether or not others witness it. As I look toward my future, I no longer fear the empty rooms or silent phone. My days are full with purpose, my heart complete within itself. The greatest gift that elderly stranger gave me wasn't the return of my children. It was the return of myself. Have you ever felt forgotten by someone you sacrificed everything for? How did you reclaim your sense of worth? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of redemption and self-discovery resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of resilience and healing. Remember, sometimes the person who needs your forgiveness most is yourself. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to find your own dignity, no matter what circumstances have brought you to this moment.